out in and quite a few in the room. So thanks for being here. Our invocation this morning is going to be Reverend Stephen Smith.
Let us pray. Gracious God, you set us at tasks which demand our best efforts, and then you inspire and empower us to do your will. Give us the strength and courage to do those things necessary for the upbuilding of your kingdom in this life, and not just the life to come. Amen.
Is Dave Matthews in the meeting on the Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay. Dave Williamson.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Right. Do we have any announcements this morning? Ramona, first hand I saw a couple others. Ramona is first.
I haven't had my coffee yet, so I'm not really sure how this is going to go. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone here and up there. Our member sign up went out, and we've had some people jump on board and sign right up. I have a clipboard that I'm going to scoot around today, but please make sure you go on. It's similar to what we did last week with Tim Redmond and myself. On the tables, just a little description, just a short introduction, about 1.5 to 2 minutes per introduction. So a total of 4, just letting us know a little bit about each other. What am I doing wrong here, Will?
Oh, it's not working.
Okay. So I'm going to pass around the clipboard. Please find someone to go ahead and sign up with. Get to know somebody new. It'll be fun. I won't start. Thank you.
Dave Williamson.
Good morning, Rotary.
Good morning.
Hey, listen, I want to give everybody a couple more chances to sign up for OSU parking project that we have. Just to let you know that it's 3 dates, September 11th, September 18th, and September 25th. Right now, game day, September 11th is at noon. So we'll start parking cars around 9 a.m. that morning. On the 11th, the 18th, it's 3:30 in the afternoon is game time. So we'll start parking cars about 11:30 around noon. And then on the 25th, the game time is yet to be determined. So we'll be letting folks know. But essentially, I'm looking for about 8 to 12 volunteers each of those days, those 3 days. I've got about 6 or 7 signed up now. I've got a clipboard I'm going to pass around for those at the meeting. For those of you that are on Zoom, you can go onto the club website and sign up there on the sign up. And Claudia is going to send it out again so everybody knows. But this is an excellent opportunity. Each of these days, we should raise between $1,500 and $2,000 just for the simple 5 to 6 hours that we're there. So I don't need everybody the whole time, but I need everybody for most of the time leading into that. So if you're available on the 11th, the 18th, or the 25th, please feel free to sign up. Bring your spouse. We'll put them to work. It's a good chance for get everybody involved in Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I believe Claudia has an announcement.
Just a reminder, the river cleanup, Saturday river cleanup is tomorrow at 9 o'clock. It usually goes for a few hours. We're going to hear a lot about why we need to do river cleanup from our speaker today. But I'm going to pass this around. If you haven't signed up online, I sent it out again yesterday. And just for you at home, I'll send it out again. But please sign up. It's a great thing to do with kids. So if you have kids at home, bring them on over. Or friends, or family.
All right, it's going to be a good time. Thank you, Claudia. And is there any other announcement? Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody received an email from Cindy from Family of Rotary yesterday. And if you didn't look at it because you were doing something bad or bad news, you should definitely take a look at it because it's all good news and it will put a smile on your face. And there were several Rotary anniversaries, and I mean, you know, your Rotary anniversary, there's all kinds of other fun stuff in there, but just wanted to point out this month, we've got Alan Reuter with 10 years in the club, Jim Warburton with 15 years in the club. We have Claudia Trustee and Joel Campbell, both celebrating 20 years in the club this month, and then John Williamson, 25 years in the club this month. So pretty awesome. That I will bring up our sergeant.
I think there was someone online that was going to say something.
It was me.
Roberta, what you got?
Just two quick announcements. One, I'm obviously not in person, so can someone please take a picture of our speaker? And two, September 24th, please write it on your calendar. We're going to be making kids packs. So we need you to come in person if you can. Wear a mask if you need to. We'll put you 6 feet apart, but we really need as many people as possible. That's it. Thank you.
And David Bentz is our sergeant. Welcome, David.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be back in the sergeant role. This is fun. What's up, Powell? We do not have any guests, I don't think, this morning. Any guests here? Didn't see any on the list. Who here, we got a lot of people on Zoom this morning. Who here has been on Zoom at least once since the beginning of July, since Mike started his term? Raise your hand. All right. Well, we've noticed, the sergeants have noticed that the treasury is down because of all the people who are avoiding fines by coming in on Zoom. But you cannot escape the long arm of the sergeant. So if you just raise your hand, you owe $1. If you are on Zoom today, you also owe $1 next time you're here. It is honor system, but you need to put an extra $1 in the till next time you're here. If you're not wearing your pin today, you owe $1. Cufflinks do not count. Emblems on the shirt do count. Thank you. And Claudia, would you like to collect some money? All right. See if we can get that treasury up again. This morning, we have a small pot of $20 and a large pot of $325. So we will draw first for the, I'll do the choice thing. If your number gets drawn first, you can decide if you want to go for the small or the large. And I'll let our guests pick a number. Okay, 3368853. All right. Do you want small or large?
How much is it small?
Small is 20, large is 325.
I'll take small.
Okay, very good. All right, now we'll go for the large pot. Three, 3368828. Yes. Who said that? All right. All right, Pete, you're going to be looking for the 10 of clubs. Okay, Mike.
All right, thank you very much, David. And now we're going to bring up Claudia Trustee, who's going to introduce today's speaker.
Good morning again. It's my pleasure to introduce Aaron Stafford, who is Stanford. University, who is our Deputy Director of Engineering Utilities. As Deputy Director of Engineering, Aaron oversees the vast responsibilities of utilities in Dublin. This position was created in 2021. Oh, so it's new, you're new. Oh, you're old. To focus city expertise and resources of utility management, which includes our waterways, supporting systems, storm water management, our public water supply, and our sanitary sewer service system. Oh, that's what that is. Aaron began his service to the city of Dublin in 2005, and prior to being promoted to this position, Aaron served as the city of Dublin's senior civil engineer, leading the development process for engineering. He led the team that provided guidance to all private development proposals and plans, which evaluated, reviewed, and approved all development from the planning and zoning stage through construction. A graduate of Ohio Northern University, a professional engineer, and certified Six Sigma Black Belt, Aaron is a well-respected leader, not only in the public sector, but might be in the public service sector, but might be able to form a soccer team among Rotarians this morning, putting his coaching skills to new use. In line with our activity tomorrow, I'd like to introduce Aaron and learn more about him.
Thank you. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Thank you so much for having us out today. I got to speak with a few before we started. One thing, working for the city of Dublin, you guys have probably met quite a few of our employees. I think what you'll find is consistently through the organization, people that are proud of what they do. They're very excited to get to tell their story, and they're just very passionate about working for the city of Dublin. Today, we are not going to do any soccer drills unless you guys want to. I'm not going to make you do any math, but there will be quiz questions. So be prepared. The topic for today, we're going to talk a little bit about water quality in the city of Dublin and some of our efforts. As we all can recognize, the quality of our water is extremely important. I think we had a conversation before we started. It's right up there behind air as one of our resources that we absolutely have to make sure that we're maintaining and preserving. So quickly, just a little bit about myself. We talked a little bit about in the introductions. A lot of people see my business cards and wonder, do I just like to collect letters after my name? Not really. So yes, I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Ohio. Deputy Director of Engineering in charge of utilities. So we talked a little bit about what that is. That's all of our water systems, our stormwater management systems, and our sanitary sewer systems. I've been with the city since 2005. So in large part, most of my tenure at the city of Dublin has been working with private development. So we've been just a little bit busy over the last 5 to 10 years with a lot of the stuff that we've seen come to fruition with Bridge Park. As part of any of those development applications, you can imagine one of the important things with new development is making sure that we have adequate public utilities. So that was a big portion of what we did with the development, is make sure that it was planned, constructed, and designed properly. So in 2021, when we reorganized, one of the positions we created was a deputy director in charge of utilities. So at that time, I had moved over to that area and was promoted. So here I am today. We talked a little bit about what those utilities are. So what is unique about the city of Dublin is that the water that we receive comes from the city of Columbus. So in 1993, we had a cooperative agreement with the city of Columbus to provide not only our water supply, so their water treatment plants provide the water to the city of Dublin, but also the sanitary sewer treatment. So that's why when you drive around the city of Dublin, you will see water tanks, you will see water booster stations if you know what you're looking for, but you won't see wastewater treatment plants, you won't see water treatment plants. What that means for us is a lot of coordination with the city of Columbus. So how many people here have experienced a water main break, either personally or seen one in the area? Yeah. So that's one of our common things that we deal with, and we do understand those can become critical. One of the things that we have to work through with that as part of that cooperative agreement is the city of Columbus provides any of those maintenance and improvements of the water mains. So when those things happen, you'll see them come out and repair. Okay, so first quiz question. I don't have prizes, but being right is the prize. When you're an engineer, that's what you say. So the first question is how many miles, so not feet, but how many miles of public storm sewer system does the city of Dublin currently own and maintain? There is no wrong answer.
Multiple choice.
Not today.
5,000.
We got 5,000 at 500,
10,000.
10,000.
2,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's our quick dashboard. I need to scoot over because my eyes are not getting the best. So for storm sewer, we have 242 miles of storm sewer main to maintain, improve, make sure they're all repaired and working order. Sanitary sewer lines, pretty similar, 226 miles, and we have 259 miles of public water main. Why that's important to the job that I do, one of the things that is becoming more and more important is the maintenance of our infrastructure. So we'll talk a little bit later about all of the things that we have to do, plan for, and budget to make sure these things are in working order and that they continue to provide service.
So who won?
I heard 500 probably. It's not like the price is right if you went over it. All right, this is the second and last question. How many stormwater basins, and we're talking about, a lot of times we think about those as ponds, stuff, engineers, we think about those as stormwater basins. How many of those do you think we have located in the city of Dublin?
200.
200, okay. 60. It might be 60 on the golf course.
Define what it is.
A stormwater basin. So think about a receiving pond that would have storm sewer pipes that could be outletted into it.
75.
75. The answer is
Whoa.
581.
Yes.
The city of Dublin owns and maintains 195 of those. So again, when we talk about maintenance, that becomes very important. So one of the things that we are blessed, but at the same time is becoming an issue with the city of Dublin is in an engineering world, how new most of our infrastructure is, right? So a stormwater main or sanitary main that's 10 to 15 years old is not near its life cycle. Stormwater basins, we're getting some of those that are getting to the 15, 20-year age. What that means to us on the planning side is there are times when those ponds will have major maintenance that has to happen. So right now we're working with our city council to kind of plan for those things because as those things accumulate silt and sediment, eventually they will stop working. So that's one of the things when we talk about the number and the scale of what we do. Okay, so we talked about those numbers. We talked about the scale. So the question is why do we have so much infrastructure? Okay, so when we talk about stormwater management, and that relates the most to water quality, one of the things that is important for us for stormwater management and a requirement is to make sure that we're meeting, there's Ohio EPA requirements, and the city of Dublin has stormwater management requirements. Dublin is unique in that they have controls and requirements not only for the water quality, so reducing silt, sediment, all those things that go into our streams and rivers that we do not want there, but also quantity control. So what we mean by quantity control is each time we put in a new stormwater system, we design the release rate or how much water will outflow from those ponds into our streams and rivers. Why that's important to everyone else in the world is that's how we make sure that our streams, rivers, floodways aren't causing things downstream, aren't causing flooding, aren't damaging property, other things like that. We did talk about the Ohio EPA has requirements also. So any development that you have coming in will provide detailed designs. So most of the ponds that you see throughout Dublin are engineered, designed to be able to function, meet those requirements. We talked about stormwater maintenance basins. So that's the main way in Dublin that they treat that water. Typically what they're doing, they're allowing the silt and sediment that's in that water to be able to settle out. So when we talk about that major maintenance, what you can envision is that water's coming in, those fine particulates, the silt and sediment settling into the bottom of that basin. You can imagine over time, it builds up. And eventually that storage capacity is gone. So when we talk about that major maintenance, those are the things that are on our forefront. So some of the questions you guys would likely have if you were an engineer or wanted to be an engineer is you go down to Bridge Park, you don't see ponds. So maybe the question is, well, did you guys just ignore those requirements? So the answer is no. So what you would see if you could peel back the pavement, the sidewalks, the beautiful area down there is there are underground structures, mechanical systems that actually handle, treat, and release the stormwater. So as we develop more of those dense areas, you're going to see less and less ponds, and you'll see more of those things that are happening underground. So it's not that it isn't be treated, you just can't see it. And actually, our code actually prohibits ponds in the Bridge Park area. There's a picture, we've seen many ponds. You know, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think it's easy to say, why is that important, especially in Dublin? You know, a lot of these things are hidden gems. There are many, many examples of beautiful, beautiful waterways, streams. This right here is Sean Falls and Run Falls. These are all examples. These are not from Google. These are from Dublin. Sanitary sewer systems. So when we talk about water quality, maybe a lot of people will think, you know, well, how is that related? Hopefully we don't have, you know, sanitary that is tied into anything that get into our water systems. But there is a lot that we have to do to make sure that we're preserving water quality with that. So our sanitary sewer systems, we are also lucky with the age of our system. There are communities, Columbus is one of them, that because of the age of their systems, they have what they are called as combined systems. So they are actually storm and sanitary mains that are combined. In our world, we do not want that, right? We want to keep those things separated. So when we think about water quality in our sanitary sewer systems, some of the things that we do are maintenance activities. Okay, so we spend, I think it's a biannual basis, there's a $1.5 million program where we'll go in, and those are older sanitary mains, we'll go in and we'll provide cast in place liner. So it's a resin-based system that we would inject into that sanitary sewer. It's applied with high heat, and it preserves that sanitary sewer and provides a lining. Why that's important for water quality is because what we want to make sure that preserving our sanitary sewer is the capacity. Over time, as those joints between the mains become separated, they can allow what we call inflow and infiltration. So what that is rainwater, stormwater, those things that we do not want in our sanitary taking up our capacity, getting into our system. In heavy rain events, what that can mean is there are times where the sanitary sewer system could become surcharged, and we would have that effluent coming up and out of our manholes. We do not want that ever to happen, right? Nobody wants to have that happen. So to preserve our water quality, that's one of the things that we really do. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money making sure those things are operating as best as we can. Quickly, one of the other things we're doing as far as sanitary sewer systems, there are pockets throughout the city. I know this map doesn't show too well, but each of those labels are different areas or pockets of the city that do not have access to public sanitary sewer and water. So what that would mean for most of those lots, they have on-site septic systems and wells. I think at last count, when we had those analyzed, there was 347. That should have been one of my first questions. That's quite a bit. So one of the things that we have moved forward with as a council initiative is there's an unserved area program. And what that is city programming public improvements to be able to extend public sanitary sewer and water mains to these areas. It's a 15-year program. The other map that shows up there, in 2015, we had, working with Franklin County Public Health, we had a health survey done of all of those areas. So what's important about those septic systems, obviously, is when they fail or stop working, there is a high potential for them to start getting some of their outflow into our open waterways in our groundwater. And we want to protect that and make sure that we don't have that happen. So we are encouraging and trying to get as many of these off of septic system as we can. It's a 15-year program that we program into our 5-year CIP. And this year, I think we're doing 2 different projects, about $3.5 million. Next year, we'll do about $5 to $6 million of public projects to bring these new areas offline. The last thing we're going to talk about as far as our programs is our waterways maintenance program. So when we talk about waterways, what we're talking about is open channels, right? So our streams, our rivers, even drainage ditches. Why those are important are all the things that we talked about today, right? Being able to convey stormwater, reduce flooding, but there's more beyond that we're looking at, right? There's riparian habitat, and all that really means is the natural environment that is connected to that stream. So think about the vegetation, the trees, the things that are along those streams and rivers that we want to be able to preserve. Some initiatives the cities have taken to preserve that. One, we have a stream protection code. So what that says is areas that we have highlighted, basically any of our open waterways, when a developer would come in and say, hey, I want to develop or lay out a new subdivision in this area. If there's a stream corridor protection zone, think of it as a buffer that's coming off of that stream that says, yes, you can develop, but there is an area that we need to preserve along that stream and river. Purpose for that, erosion control, maintaining that habitat, also keeping buildings, structures, grading away from that floodplain to be able to preserve our flood carrying capacity. So along with that, Franklin Soil and Water District, we contract with them for a lot of our services when it comes to streams and rivers. Some of the things that they do is they will go out and they'll walk every single one of our streams, which is miles. I don't have that quiz question either. That was the fourth one. But some of the things they'll look for is they'll go out and identify any illicit discharge. And all that is a fancy word for outlets or things that are piped or connected to that stream. What we're looking for when we find those is we're making sure that they're permitted, they're proper, and then we're not having things being sent into our rivers and streams that we wouldn't want. So we have that as a biannual program where we'll go out, we'll have that done. As part of those, we try to eliminate any of those violations that we have, but there are a lot of those things that we're looking at to be able to make sure we're protecting those waterways. The map that you see, if you can, so this is zoomed in, I believe this is the Kaufman Park area. I walk this area a lot. It's a beautiful area. But one of the things that we had them do is walk all of our waterways. So it was over a 4-year period because it is quite a bit. So they've done 3 of the 4. This fall will be the final here, and we'll have all of our streams and rivers walked and inspected. So each of those blue dots that you see on the screen are instances where those inspections have turned up issues. So generally what they're looking for is, are there blockages in the stream? We found metal drums that are just sitting in those streams, grass debris, those type of things, areas that we want to clean up, looking for violations, making sure that we're keeping that area protected, preserved, and making sure it can preserve the flood carrying capacity. So for the first 3 years, we have a little over 320 different inspection reports. We have the final area, which is north of 270, east of the river. If you can see the upper right corner of that map, that red area, that is what we have left to walk. So at the end of this year, when we have that, the question is, what are we going to do with all those inspection reports? So what we're working with now is a consultant that we're going to work with, that we're going to take all of those inspection reports and apply that and come up with a program. So what that program is going to do is take a look at those areas and say, okay, here are all the issues. Let's prioritize what needs to be removed. Let's figure out what we need to do. And then you'll start seeing that program into a project and start cleaning those areas up. One of the challenges with that area, as you can imagine, is not all of the waterways are under Dublin's control jurisdiction. So there are some times when we will get a call or a concern about different waterways, and we are handcuffed to an extent because there are no legal easements. It's private property. There aren't things that we can do to be able to address those issues. So part of that program, as we're looking into, how do we solve that problem when it is private property, but things do need to get taken care of. There's a lot of different options. There's a lot of different ways that can happen, but that is definitely, when we think about that program, that is a challenge. The last thing is with waterways. One of the things that we do administer also is the floodplain management program. So FEMA has designated mapping that shows floodway and floodplain. The only difference between those two is floodway would be somewhere where we'd expect in the normal flow of our stream where you have travel and water. When we think about that area, when people are developing or want to do activities, we have to keep that area free and clear. And that is required by the federal government through FEMA. Floodplain is a little bit less strict. There are things that you guys have probably heard of as like 100-year floodplain. Some properties you guys may know have that on there. As we look at those areas, there are certain permitting things that we have to check. Again, that makes sure that we're keeping and preserving not only protecting the structures, but making sure we're maintaining that flood carrying capacity. So there's a map, and so when you look on that map in that area, can you guys pick out the blue hatching that's on that area? So that's when we look at our mapping, and this is actually available. There's Discovery is our GIS system that's through our city website. So if you guys are ever interested in those type of things, that is available on our public website. So generally, this is our mapping system that we can look in those areas, and if you can notice the development pattern around those areas, you can see how that buffer or those areas of floodway, and then the red is the floodplain. You can see how that influences the layout of the design and how things are placed when we're working with development. Okay, so this is kind of the easy slide. Why is this important, right? So we talked a little bit about where we get our water, right? So what is kind of funny, at least in my world, when I think about it, is the water that we're putting in to the storm sewer system that ends up in the river that flows downstream is pretty quickly picked up by City of Columbus water plants, treated, and it's pumped right back up here. So when we think about those things that get into our storm sewer inlets, that get into our streams and rivers, it isn't too far disconnected to impacting ourselves when we think about those things, right? Those things that get into the water, they do end up downstream. And, I think one of the things that we've seen and we've thought a lot about when we planned Bridge Park is one of the things that we wanted to address and really take advantage of with the city of Dublin is how we interact with the river, right? It is a beautiful area, it is a great resource, but for the longest time, it was something you pretty much drove over when you're going to 161. So as we develop new developments that are really, river facing, engaging the river, along with the park that's going to come online soon, we are really opening up that river to being able for people to get down there and look at it. And we do know that as that happens, it's going to become more on our forefront about the quality of our river. So all of those things that are draining into the river, we want to make sure that we're keeping those things up to Dublin standards and doing everything we can to protect it. With that, questions and discussion.
We had 7 inches of rain like they had on the east side. Double system, they will handle it all.
So the question that I would ask you is, what duration of storm? And all that means, how long?
90 minutes.
It was over a day or day and a half.
Yeah. Somebody told me when
Ages last week, so
Oh, absolutely. So the question was, how would Dublin's system react, or would we be able to handle an event? And you said a little over 7 inches?
Yeah.
A little over 7 inches. So when we think about stormwater management, because one of the things that my group handles also is drainage requests. The other thing that we work with is there are mechanical systems within Dublin that we call lift stations for sanitary sewer. And what that means is almost 90 to 95% of our system is, when you talk about sanitary sewer, it's gravity fed. And all that means is it's using gravity. There's no pumping mechanism. There's no mechanical units that are helping that flow. There are some areas of the city. So think about some of the homes you would see, think about Riverside, between Riverside and the river. So think about how some of those homes, a lot of those homes sit lower than the roadway. That sanitary sewer main in that area follows the roadway. So what you're seeing is a connection to a unit that is lower than that sanitary main. In those areas, we do have what we call lift stations. And all that really is a fancy word for areas where sanitary sewer is mechanically pumped from an area that is lower up into our storm sewer system. So with my new position, generally whenever it rains, I don't sleep. For 2 reasons. One, I know we're going to get drainage complaints. I'm thinking about the areas. The other thing is when we get those heavy rains, those are the times when those lift stations are under a lot of pressure. Now, here's the good news is, every single one of those lift stations now, we have on a real-time monitoring system. So what that means is my phone will start sending me text messages from individual lift stations telling me if there's high water alarms, if I have low batteries. So that phone sits by me most of the time, even when I'm sleeping. So that is, go ahead. Okay. So when we think about those rain events, so some of the things that we think about is what's important to our system, how those things operate is, what's really important is how saturated is the ground. So a rain event, when it hasn't rained for 3 weeks and we get 1.5 inches of rain, typically won't cause a problem. If we have a week where we have, it seems like we've kind of had recently where we get 1 inch one day, it's dry, another inch, a day and a half, then we get a 3-inch rain the following day. When that soil can't handle really a lot more of that water, that's when we start seeing a lot of impact. So when we look at stormwater management, some of the things that we think about is there are calculations that we talk about as far as rainfall depth. So in this area, when we talk about the 100-year storm, generally that would be getting a little over 5 inches in a 2-hour storm. So that frequency and intensity of storm is what we would use to plan. That frequency of event is something that they have analyzed and said that's a 1 in 100-year storm occurrence. So a 7-inch rain is generally, yes, if you're going to see standing water, you're going to see some areas that have surcharge. So the good thing is a lot of these developments, when we go through and we plan that out, that is very analyzed and engineered. So what I could show you is if we had a new neighborhood, we have a map that will show you in a 100-year storm, at least we plan for a 100-year storm, we'll show limits of ponding. And what that means is for that storm, here are the areas that we know will have standing water for some time. Now, when we look at those areas, we determine those aren't areas where we can locate structures. We make sure with the roadways, there's at least a lane that has passable area. So we'll look at ponding in that area. But yeah, over 7 inches is going to be a pretty rare occurrence, but that is something that, yeah, it's going to cause some temporary issues for the system.
Obviously, we use a lot of fertilizer around here. Are there areas in Dublin where ponds or rivers might have toxic algae?
Yes, and that is one of the very important things that we talk about. So here's one thing with ponds that is tough. One thing that ponds don't do a great job of is removing nitrogen and phosphates from the water. So if anybody's ever read the side of a fertilizer bag, you can imagine what some of the ingredients are that you place in those areas. So yes, fertilizer and those elements getting into our streams and rivers are one of the main causes of algal bloom. So you'll see those in a lot of lakes. You'll see those in our ponds. That is where a lot of those things have come from. So we have public education requirements and things that we have done to try to eliminate and reduce a lot of those things that happen. We had a fertilizer campaign a few years back where we had some brochures that were passed out. You know, I know we do love to keep this area green, but one of the things that we're trying to encourage people is fertilize as much as we need. Try not to over fertilize, and some of it is simple as when you're applying it, do some simple things to keep it out of our storm sewer system. So for the longest time, if I was fertilizing my own lawn, we know that, you know, those drop spreaders, they'll throw those pellets other ways. One of the things, something simple as taking a broom and getting that fertilizer off of your driveway or the roadway so that it's not directly connected into the storm sewer can do a huge difference in what we're seeing as far as receiving those things. So I think, you know, half the time my neighbors probably think I'm a little bit silly when I'm out there in the street, but there's a reason for that. Because when it is in the lawn, that is something that it can be taken in, and it's not nearly as likely to get into our storm sewer system.
I know that probably 10 years ago, there was an incident when the bridge at Avery and 161 was built, and then they had the two ponds. There was an incident of a car going into the pond and a man passing. Has that impacted how deep these ponds are built, or just the layout around the ponds to make sure that doesn't occur again?
And that is a great question. So a few things that happened, right? After that, what you saw was you'll see retaining walls are now built along that edge. So that was the very first thing that was happening. When you would go in and look at our stormwater management code, there are very specific things that speak to that issue. So one of the things when we lay out and design stormwater basins, there is a requirement that 100-year, the normal pool where that surface, the elevation of the water will sit, has to be at minimum 50 feet from any public way. So we're starting to set up that buffer. The second part about what we do, there is a maximum depth for the stormwater basins. So one, the maximum depth of a pond is 12 feet. So there's a few reasons. One is safety. The other thing is that, I wish I had a simpler term, it's thermal stratification. And all that is over time, as that gets deeper, you will see stratified layers of temperature that happens, and that's not good for aquatic habitat. The last thing, when you look at our stormwater management, that in any of, especially the newer ponds, you'll see what we call a safety ledge. So if you could peel back the water and look underneath the grading, it is set back at a gentle slope from the edge, and then there's what we call a safety ledge. It's probably 1.5 to 2 feet deep. And that's for that very reason. And that's more geared towards somebody that we might, you know, slip in, children. We make sure that there is that area. It's usually 6 to 8 feet of a safety ledge where it's only 2 feet deep in that area around that edge. You know, probably the last thing when we talk about safety and interaction is when we get into larger storm sewer mains, you'll see like a safety grade is what we call it. You'll see like an iron grid that's around that area to make sure that we don't get children, animals that could get into that storm sewer system.
Aaron, what's the boundary line from the water treatment plant that we see on 33 that's Marysville? And what is being pumped and provided by the city of Columbus? Is Costco the corridor of industrial parkway and all that growth?
And
where does that stand in your?
that is a great question. So when we talk about the sewer and water agreement with the city of Columbus, when we set that up, there is something through the EPA that you have to have set up called a 208 plan. And all that really is it defines your service boundary. So we do have an area through the EPA and in conjunction with the city of Columbus that we are eligible to serve. When we look at that area, there are areas that we have the exclusive right to serve. So what that means, if somebody would come in, we are the only entity that can provide service. There are areas that overlap that is a negotiated area. And when we say negotiated, that means that either we or the city of Columbus can agree to serve it. But there are definitely boundaries in that area that you're speaking of. The boundary for our sewer and water in that area is right there at 161, that post road area.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good question. So tomorrow, the people that are volunteering at the Scioto Park cleanup, what are they looking for and why is it important?
So what they're looking for is just things, I mean, basically they just need cleaned up. It is extremely important because one of the things that we talk about water quality and stream health, we want to keep debris and those things that aren't natural to the environment out of the water, right? Not only for the water quality that we need to have, but we're also aquatic habitat, the natural habitats in that area. We want to keep it cleaned up. I mean, those things are all important, but we talked about those pictures. The other thing that we want to make sure is we are all proud and want to preserve and be able to have everyone enjoy those areas, right? And those are all beautiful pictures that we have. But it's going to take an effort to keep it that way. So like everything else we talked about as far as maintenance of our areas, that's just one more thing that we need to make sure that we're doing. And we do appreciate, our volunteers and anybody that comes out to help us in that effort.
Barrett, thank you so much. All right, I have two quick quotes because I couldn't decide. The first one comes from Lewis Black. When a country wants television more than they want clean water, they've lost their grip. And the second one from Audrey Hepburn. Water is life and clean water means health. Next week, we have a presentation on cadaver dogs, and it's my understanding that there will be some doggies here. So if you want to see doggies, you have to come in person. I don't think they're going to be able to appear on Zoom. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Guys, please.